Welcome to Embedded. I'm Alicia White, here with Christopher White. Our guest this week is Carrie Sundra of Alpenglow Industries.
Hi, Carrie. Welcome back. It's been quite a while.
Hello. Yeah. It's good to be back on the show.
Could you tell us about yourself as if we'd never met before?
Well, I am Carrie Sundra of Alpenglow Industries. That's a small business that I started. And I am an engineer. I have done a lot of things throughout my life so far. I've done electronics for unmanned aircraft. I've dyed yarn. I've made yarn tools. And yeah, now I'm making some, I call them frivolous circuits and irreverent electronics. So as well as some handy tools for makers and for engineers.
We want to do lightning round, which you have heard the show, so I'm just going to say, are you ready?
I am ready.
What is Alpenglow? The thing, the not your company. What did you name your company after?
I named my company after an effect of light. So it's when the light hits the mountains, either at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, when you have those like nice long reddish tones to the light. And something very special, especially in the Sierras, happens where you have that really white gray granite, and it just like lights up this fiery, like yellowy orange red, and that's called Alpenglow. And so I named it originally when I was dyeing yarn, because I was dyeing yarn with natural dyes, and so it had like a tie-in there. To like this glowing natural color. And then I kept it when I started doing more and more electronics, I kept it. And because kind of I want people to be inspired by electronics and to see electronics in a different light. And a lot of the things that we do are also kind of LED based and light based. So just kind of, it still fit.
Have you ever seen the green flash?
I have not, even though I grew up in the Caribbean and apparently had ample opportunity to see the green flash. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about whether or not it really exists, I have to say.
I've seen it. It's cool.
Sorry. I have pictures I've taken with a camera too. So.
Well, he had to see it because I was on a mission for like a whole year.
It's easier to see with a camera. Have you seen the zodiacal light? Zodiacal.
No. Is that different from the northern lights?
Yes, it is the dust that is in line with the disk of the solar system. And if you're in a very, very dark place, I think you can kind of see it, or may require photography. I don't remember, but it's a kind of a glow from all the dust that's in the solar system. Oh,
interesting. No, I don't believe I have seen that. That's cool though. Can you see it from anywhere, or do you have to be in certain geographical locations?
I think you can see it from anywhere.
But it has to be really, really dark.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's a weird triangular kind of thing.
Cool.
Have you seen the northern lights or southern?
No, I have not seen the northern or southern lights. We came close. There was supposed to be a little bit of activity a few years ago when I was in Shetland, and I was really hoping to see them, but sadly they did not come out. So still have to see that one.
Oh, sorry, my turn again. Jeez. If you could teach a college course, what would you want to teach?
It's a toss-up between something that I would probably call how to build. And we would just build stuff out of electronics and, out of parts and materials. And it would be sort of more of a freshman level class just to get people familiar with the process of building things and incorporating electronics into things. It would either be that, or it would be something probably called like from prototype to production. And it would go over like, okay, you have this idea. Now let's make a proof of concept. Now let's make a legit prototype that you can give to somebody else. And now let's get, a few more of these made and a beta group going. And all of those steps and iterative things that you have to do in order to actually make your idea real and able to be sold and able to leave the nest.
Have you read Alan Cohen's Prototype to Product book?
I have not, no.
It's really good. He was on the show recently, but not talking about that, talking about other things. It goes through a lot of what you say, but it also touches a little bit on trying to figure out what your product really is.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so if you were teaching a post-college professional development type course about embedded systems, what 3 topics should you definitely cover?
Strange question.
What a very detailed question.
Yeah. That is a detailed question. I think I would I would definitely cover commenting your code for yourself and other people in the future. That would definitely be one thing. Let's see. Another thing that I would I don't know. I might have to think about this a little bit more.
Well, maybe I'll ask you at the end again because I really need the answers for these. Okay, so let's be done with lightning round unless you have one more you want, Christopher?
No, that was not very lightning either. We were all over the place.
It can be the slow roll thunder round.
You were fine, but we weren't really doing it very well.
Okay. So you've mentioned yarn, and when we talked to you, what seems like eons ago, you were finishing a Kickstarter about yarn winding. Skeinminder?
Skeinminder. People pronounce skein different ways.
See, it's hard to say.
Yeah. Some people say skein, some people say skein, some people say skein, but I try not to be too picky about it. But I say skeinminder. Okay.
So that got kickstarted and it involved winding the yarn.
Yeah, I basically made a controller for desktop winders. Other people make the winders themselves, but none of them had they had very rudimentary speed control, just, triac dimmer switch based, basically. And there was no way to automate them. So if you were constantly winding your own skeins from cones, which some dyers do, you want all of your skeins to be the same length so that, you can have consistency in your product so people know what to expect, know how many skeins they'll need in order to knit a project, that kind of thing. And there was just no automation. You couldn't tell the winder how many rotations you wanted to wind to and, get it to stop at that. And so that is basically the device that I built. And it could be used with any tabletop winder and is really easy to install because I didn't want people to have to solder or strip wires or do anything like that.
How was fulfilling the Kickstarter?
It was good. I mean, it went off pretty much without a hitch. I had one part that was a little late coming in because it was a complete snafu with the company who made it. It was the overlays for it, which are kind of integrated with the buttons. And yeah, the first batch I got had the holes cut in completely the wrong spot. And, it was one of those things that was like a 4-week lead part. So they made them again and, it was totally their fault. So they made them super quick. But I was maybe a week late delivering with the start of the deliveries because of that. But yeah, it went off without a hitch. I had already built 10 of them and there were really almost no changes from the prototypes. So I had a really good idea of what it was going to take to build them. And I hired a couple of people part-time to help me, and that was awesome. So yeah, the Kickstarter went great.
You're not going to complain about shipping? Because I've heard complaints about shipping.
I mean,
I priced it all out ahead of time. This was not my first rodeo at selling things. And I think with a lot of people it is. And so they get surprised by things. And so I had done, I did a massive spreadsheet beforehand with all of my costs, including shipping, including Kickstarter's percentage, like everything, including an estimation of the sales tax I would have to pay based upon the number of people from California that I guessed were going to buy them, which like that was awful. I don't know if Kickstarter now charges sales tax. It would be really nice if they did. But yeah, I did all that stuff.
Shh. Don't tell Christopher that.
I did look it up, so I know I'm in compliance, so it's fine.
Yeah. Well, if you're doing really small numbers of stuff, sure, but like this was definitely well above that.
Yeah.
And then you did a second project, Skein Twister.
Yeah. And I did crowdfund that as well. But I just did it. Well, I did it mostly on my own. Well, I did it all on my own website. I did use a different payment processing service that at that time was set up for crowdfunding and kind of for exactly the type of thing that I wanted to do, which was crowdfund on my own website. It was called Celery, but they're no longer in business. So that actually worked great too. It was very helpful to already have a customer base from the Skein Minder. And then the Skein Twister, it turns out, had a lot more market appeal and just a bigger market because every dyer who's dyeing yarn has to twist their own skeins at the end of the process. It's just something you have to do. And whereas not every dyer is necessarily winding their own skeins. So yeah, it was a much bigger market and it was a much bigger pain in the butt for people and a literal pain point. Like people were getting elbow tendonitis and all sorts of repetitive injuries from, doing this twisting process on hundreds or thousands of skeins of yarn every week.
What made you decide to to crowdfund yourself, do the whole process yourself?
I felt like I could handle it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And I mean, I am not managing giant campaigns, right? Like it's not a cooler or whatever the latest hot Kickstarter is, right? It's not something that has super wide commercial appeal, or consumer appeal. It is, my tools are very specific. They're really business to business tools. They are only useful for you if you dye yarn. They're not even useful for you if you just knit or work with yarn in any way. So I knew that I wasn't going to be handling, tens of thousands of people. I thought a couple hundred maybe. So that was one thing. And just having gone through the process, with Kickstarter, like myself and with Kickstarter, because my tools are so specific, Kickstarter didn't really bring any more people to me, So when I was doing the Skein Twister at that point, I was just looking at it and being like, okay, well, I'm going to pay this, large extra fee and I'm not going to really get much from it. So that's what mainly made me decide to do it myself from my own website. The payment processing was a little bit tricky because a lot of payment processors, have crowdfunding, like specifically it's against their terms of service. And somehow like Celery was sort of getting around that, but I'm not sure if they really were because I did get called by PayPal after a few months, like a phone call, like, hey, how's it going? So what are you doing here? And like, when are you going to deliver? And that was kind of weird to me because I was like, well, I'm using you as a payment processor through Celery. And I assumed that you guys had something figured out that like, that this was okay. But it turned out that it was fine. Because basically I had made like 20 beta units for the Skein Twister, and my lead time was only about 3 months. So, that actually does fall within their terms of service and for, kind of custom orders or for ordering things that are out of stock.
So do you still dye yarn yourself?
I don't really. I would occasionally do it just for myself, but definitely not for sale anymore. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and like a completely different process, and you need like kind of a different space, and it's different equipment. So it just wasn't something that I could do and also do electronics at the same time.
That makes sense, but you just made tools to make it easier.
I know, I did. But if I want to focus on those tools and, building good ones, and also, having good customer service and things like that, then I can't be dyeing yarn at the same time. But I can build more electronics at the same time, because that's, it takes the same equipment, same tools, same kind of skill set for people. So, yeah.
You mentioned irreverent electronics and frivolous circuitry.
Yes.
What does that mean?
I like to do things that are kind of funny and maybe involving swear words, or maybe a little bit persnickety and like specifically designed to be a pain in the ass. So so that's where that comes from. And I don't know if anybody else also finds them funny. I hope so. But I like making them. So yeah, I made one thing that I called the FUnicorn. The FUnicorn basically is the most majestic way of telling a person off that you could possibly come up with, I think, in my opinion, maybe. And it involves basically an Arduino clone, a majestic gold rearing unicorn, and FU, but completely spelled out in beautiful cursive letters in LEDs.
And you do sell some of these, so other people must find them funny.
Yeah, I sell a few of them. It's that one in particular. It's actually a large board, and 122 LEDs are not cheap. And so unfortunately, like, it's at a price point that's a little bit above where I wanted it to be. But actually, compared to other things that have that many LEDs on them and stuff like that, it's actually not that bad. Right now I'm selling it for $69, just because that's a funny number. But it is quite, the assembly cost on that board was pretty expensive.
Are you using addressed LEDs, or are you doing like a Charlie Plex matrix sort of thing?
Oh, neither. So I'm using just standard red 603 LEDs, just, dumb red LEDs that were all, placed. Well, all of my boards, I pretty much do all the placement by hand, but they were, hand placed at varying angles in order to, spell out FU in script. And basically each word is individual. So, F is on its own line, U is on its own line, the exclamation point is on its own line. And then there's also like a really interesting colored, like cyan LED at the tip of the horn, and that's on its own line as well. And the way that I did it was that I put those 3 banks of LEDs basically on, each of them has their own LDO. So there's actually a switcher that makes 3.3 volts and runs the entire board. And then there's an LDO that steps down to like 2.5 volts for each bank of LEDs. And then, it goes through the resistor in the LED, because I think they're like 1.8 volt VF LEDs. So I wanted to get a little bit, a little bit more of the power kind of spread out amongst the different components there. But yeah, and I just put basically the line from the Atmega 328P just goes to an enable line on each of those power converters. And so when you're like PWMing them and stuff like that, you're actually PWMing the enable on the power converter. And because it's, an LDO, it's very, very quick to start up and shut down. And it's, it's just like you're commanding all of those LEDs at once.
Okay. I for some reason thought you could spell out other things, but now that I look at it, yes, you can only spell that out.
That's it. It's a one-trick pony. It has one purpose in life. And that's to show people how you really feel. But
it also comes with the big red button kit too.
Yes. So the fun thing for me is like seeing how many different ways you can actuate it, right? And so, of course, hitting a big red button is super satisfying, and that's one of my favorite ways. I also have the FUnicorn hooked up as a capacitive touch sensor, so you can touch the FUnicorn and it'll go off. We've also hooked up an ultrasonic distance sensor, so we had the social distancing 6-foot version of the FUnicorn, and then we've also used the AIY voice kit with the Raspberry Pi. And so you can say like, hey, Google, FU, and it'll actually light up. And that might be my favorite version because it's kind of multi-purpose.
All right. You mentioned that it is for sale. It's for sale on Tindie and on your own site.
Yeah, we just started listing stuff on our own website like just last week. So that is very, very new. And yes, and we've been selling on Tindie for a while, for a few years now. I like both, honestly. Like I like Tindie a lot as a marketplace. They charge a very reasonable fee. They're always retweeting everything that their people sell. They interact with you a lot on Twitter, which is really cool. And people who are going there specifically to like find unique, fun things. So it's a great market fit for a lot of what we do. But yeah, it's also nice though to have your own website, and I want to expand offerings, and I want to curate cool things from other people as well. And I can't really do that. I can't really sell other people's stuff if I'm on like from the Tindie platform.
Some of your other things are learn to solder kits. Yeah. How do you decide which ones to do for that?
That's been pretty easy so far. So far, actually, my employee Robin has been designing them, and it's been an awesome learning experience for her because these are the first circuit boards she's ever designed. So it's really nice when you can enable somebody like that and have it be both a teaching and a skill building thing, as well as then something that we can sell in the store that is really nice for beginners. Because frankly, like I might not be as good about designing things for beginners, right? Because it's been so long since that realm for me. I tend to more easily design things that are like kind of intermediate level.
And you've mentioned employees. Is this your full-time job?
Yes, it is my full-time job. I'm still doing like a tiny bit of consulting work, just really like follow-on stuff from previous clients. But skein twisters are about half of what we do. Skein twisters, a little bit of skein minders, and then the other half is we're working on building up all of the fun kind of maker electronics, things that are a little bit more educational in nature and creative in nature.
How do you decide what sort of frivolous circuitry you want to build for yourselves versus what you want to sell to other people? Is sales always in your mind, or do you sometimes say, I just want this for me?
No, it's a little bit of both. I mean, we kind of have things divided up into products and projects. So products are things that we're selling. Projects are things that we're just doing for ourselves, but like we're still talking about them and we're still tweeting about them, and we'll still like try to document them and things like that so that other people, if they're interested, can reproduce them. It's like deciding like what to do. It's a bit of a lot of things. Is like, it's yes, a bit of planning and things that speak to us from a either utility perspective or, just a fun perspective. And then sometimes there will be something there will be like some small little problem or little thing that we'll encounter while we're doing something else. And it's like, oh, what would be really useful would be to have this thing. Why don't we just quick make that? And, there. Now we have it. Yay. That was, and like, that was kind of how the switch trick came about, which is a breadboard power supply. That's a switching module that has a bunch of different like jumper selectable outputs. That was like, I needed to breadboard up that chip. And I was like, well, I could just make like a quick dev board, or I could put a little bit more time into it and make it into something useful that other people could also, find useful. And that would plug straight into a breadboard and all that kind of stuff. So there's a bit of that. And then sometimes it's a little bit of, holiday kind of thing, like, and holiday stuff and inspiration. So like I made this surface mount soldering kit called P.S. I Hate You, and it was in a heart shape.
That's the one I'm looking at. It's red, it's in a heart shape, it's adorable. It says your number 1, and then it has little arrows on it. It's very cute. But there's a problem with it.
There is. There are a few problems with it. It basically doesn't have any components at any normal angles, and all the traces are routed in a really kind of haphazard way. So if you're really OCD and you want your board layouts to be perfect and neat, it is exactly the perfect thing that you need to have in your life.
Well, to be fair, things are neat. They just aren't straight.
They're just not straight. No, there's not a straight line. There are traces that make acute angles,
I do appreciate for the pads for the battery are even at an angle.
Thank you. Yes.
Unnecessarily.
Unnecessarily. Yeah. There's one LED that's like in the opposite direction from the other 3.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I really wanted to use anode marked LEDs for that. And that was my original plan, to be really, really a pain in the ass about it. But unfortunately, I needed a high efficiency, like high brightness, low current LED, because I didn't know ahead of time that 555 timers have drastically different output current specs at 3 volts than they do at 5 volts. And so I had done a whole bunch of testing at 5 volts and was thinking, okay, well, no problem. These ones operate down to 3 volts, no big deal. But it's not until you get into the weeds of all the graphs in the 555 timer data sheet that you realize that the output current capacity is like tiny. It's I don't know. It might even be like 1/10 to 100th of what it is at 5 volts. So yeah, when I got the first boards, I was like, these LEDs are awfully dim.
Voltage.
So yeah, I had to quick switch to some higher brightness ones, and that was fine. But yeah, always learning, always something that's that is unexpected.
Do you have anything in mind that you're going to go forward with? I mean, I would have like a dozen ideas, and then I would, not manage.
Like I keep a list. It's called Terrible Ideas. And yeah, like I keep a list of terrible ideas. And I mean, there's so many that I want to do. Like I really want to do a feminist meeting button series. So again, on the big red button kind of theme. But I want a set of like 4, and you would hit one and it would say interrupting. And you would like hit another one and it would say, didn't I just say that? And like things like that. But I think one would actually be a positive reinforcement one. It would be like, thanks for backing me up.
But that could be sarcastic too.
No, that one should say, here, have a cookie.
I think if it just rotates through randomly, it's going to be right 99% of the time anyway.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that one's going to be a project or a product. We'll see.
I can think of so many things. I wrote that code, right? Whenever somebody explains it to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been doing this podcast, but on YouTube, but live?
Live stream. Live stream. Yeah.
That's like Twitch, but on YouTube?
Kind of, I guess.
You have to put these things in where they fit.
Yes.
There was live things before Twitch, right?
There were, yes.
No.
Yes, there were.
But were there on YouTube?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell me it's like live TV, but on YouTube?
Yeah, basically.
I'm just saying it's I'm not going to allow Twitch to replace live as an
it's like
an adjective.
TikTok, but live?
All right.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, you've been doing live streams from YouTube, which, I mean, live stuff scares me because I say such stupid stuff, and occasionally Chris will agree to cut it.
Oh, this is live. You knew that, right?
Yeah, sure, it's live. No, it's not. What?
It's one of the reasons I'm doing it.
Why?
It's because it's scary.
Okay.
I wanted to do it for a few reasons. One is just representation. One of the reasons that I want to, go through the craziness of and uncertainty of having my own company is, I have yet to work in a company that has like a good culture, especially regarding women and people who are underrepresented, and I got to the point where I'm just kind of like, screw it. I would rather build my own and work for myself and build the place and the culture that I always wanted to work at. And, there are only two of us right now. So we're very, very small, just beginning. But part of what you can do is you can just, I figured, well, I can just be myself and I can, do my thing on the internet and, be out there soldering, making my stupid comments, whatever, putting together projects, learning new things, and like featuring other people too, as well. So I feel like the more people who are different, who are out there doing things, the more likely it is that somebody else will see that and that something about it will resonate with them. And, I'm just trying to make things a little less of a dude fest.
Do you read the comments on Solder Sesh?
I don't, honestly, it's not super well viewed at this point, so I don't get a ton of comments. But I do read the comments, absolutely, and I will moderate the crap out of them. And, if somebody isn't being very nice, I haven't really had to deal with that yet, but, we'll see what happens when the time comes. I'll either clap back or delete.
That's always the scary thing about living your life more online. It's great to represent, but it's hard to not be scared.
Yeah, I'm a little less scared about that. Just I don't know. Just I guess I'm more scared of unknowns, and I know that that's out there.
Okay.
So therefore, I'm just like, yeah, I'll have to deal with it at some point in time, whatever. But no, I like the thing that's scariest to me about going live and stuff is just I've never been that comfortable in front of a camera, and I've never really enjoyed seeing pictures of myself and stuff like that. And so it's the actual like physical part of being seen that is actually the scariest, as well as just, being afraid of like saying something stupid or sounding dumb. And I've definitely like made mistakes and said things backwards and things like that. But I don't know. I just kind of am like whatever about it because I am human. I'm not perfect. Just because I make a mistake doesn't mean, that I'm bad or am, not good at what I do, right? Everybody makes mistakes, especially in front of cameras.
It's good to have that and to be practicing it. I I recently, like right before we started recording, got back a video interview I did, and I watched all of 3 seconds before I was like, why didn't somebody tell me to put on chapstick? I mean, seriously. And then I couldn't watch anymore because I was just like, I wouldn't have been able to podcast, but I have that to look forward to.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is that I'm not anti-chapstick, not at all. Chapstick is very useful and good, but I am a bit anti-makeup. I just don't enjoy wearing it. I don't enjoy wearing it. I don't enjoy the time it takes to put it on. I don't enjoy the money it takes to buy it, and so I know, being in my mid 40s, right? I am like not a spring chicken. And, but I also feel like that is also kind of part of representation. I want to see more normal people on YouTube, and doing their thing. And, it's also a thing about like the just big differences between expectations between genders, right? Like, men are viewed and never expected to like look nice all the time on camera, and yet women are. So, a bit of it is also me giving the middle finger to that expectation.
How do you choose what you're going to talk about?
Well, it originally started off with me having way too many solder kits and never like making the time to put them together. So I just started with what I had on the shelf at first. And now it's like morphed a little bit. And, there are definitely some people who I've gotten to know through like meetups and Twitter and stuff like that are doing really cool things that, I want to showcase and feature and have them talk about making, because I always think it's really interesting to talk to the person that made something about, their design decisions and why they made it and things like that. So that's really fun. And part of it is also like I want there to be some sewing and like knitting and sort of soft skills in there. Like circuits for people who don't necessarily know how to solder. And also sometimes it's just stuff that like is interesting to me that I want to learn about too. Oh, and then some of it is like behind the scenes designing products. So we just did a whole series about the I'm going to mess this up, RGB board.
Okay. I kind of want to know what that is, but I have more questions. So I may come back to that or I may not. But you did one about pocket operators recently, which are these little synths / video games. Do I get to pick one up and play with it? And then it will be really annoying to people as they listen?
Well, I think the batteries may be dead on at least one or two of them over there.
Do it.
I was so excited to see that. And then he didn't work there. I want somebody who works there to come talk to us. And I was like, oh, I can ask Carrie to introduce me and then I can, but it was just about them, which they're really cool or I wouldn't be so excited, but
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, no, it was not in conjunction with the people who made them. That one was not. That one was me and David, and he was basically kind of giving me the overview of them and how they work and stuff like that. So,
well, if you find out anybody from teenage engineering or if anybody out there is listening, I would like to talk about those. If only because I don't quite understand how to make them work the way I want, unless I'm playing a game.
Well, I mean, that's part of the fun, but they are documented. You can read the documentation.
You never told me there was documentation.
There's some documentation. I understand this feeling because that's where I was too. And that's kind of why I wanted to do that and why I wanted to have somebody on who had more experience with them and could explain it to me, and could explain to me basically what the different buttons did and how to use it. Because there's instructions on oh, you change chord like this, but there's not sort of like a basic overview and a how to on like how to make this tune your own. And that's what, that's what David was really great at, because he was like, okay, so this is how you change chord, but now do this and change the chord like once with every loop through. And then you'll like get this like cool song out of it that, you know, sounds more like like a loop a DJ would play. Right.
You're not just supposed to push buttons randomly?
Well, you can. That's fun, too.
I know. I tried that, and I was never satisfied with the results.
Part of the problem I have with them is they all have a very similar interface in some ways, but they're all different enough that they don't. Each of them makes different sounds and has different applications for what kinds of sounds. Some are like drum machines, and some are melody things, and some are bass things, and a lot of them have the same kind of recording thing for making your patterns and whatnot, but then the buttons that deal with notes and stuff are all different and do different things, so it's very confusing to try to carry over how you use one to another one, I found. But
yeah, I feel like kind of getting really familiar with one and then going to another one is a better way, because I know I kind of immediately got like 3 of them, and I tried going back and forth, and I was just like, I was just very, very confused. But I'll say the arcade is a really good one, because not necessarily you're not necessarily going to make anything melodic out of it, right? But that's not really the point of pocket operators anyway, I don't think. But what's good about it is that it has a little bit of everything, so it's not like just a percussion or just like a beat synth. It has a little bit of all of those. So I feel like it is a good like round single one to have. Plus, I mean, 8-bit arcade noises. Who doesn't love those?
And it's kind of like my Bandimals app that no matter what you do, it doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have arcade?
Yes.
I turned this one on. Oh, it's arcade.
Hey.
It's too quiet, I think.
I heard some pew-pews.
Exactly. Okay, you mentioned the fabric, the conductive, the threads, and we talked about yarn earlier.
Yes.
Is there conductive yarn, and what do you use it for?
So there's definitely conductive thread there, and I mean, when does yarn become thread? When does thread become yarn? The answer will vary depending upon who you ask.
I would philosophical say questions.
Right? I would say that thread is a type of yarn, right? So in that respect, yes, there's plenty of conductive yarn. But if you're thinking about something that's like thicker, that is made for knitting, I mean, people do knit with thread that happens to be conductive, and they'll carry it along with a bigger yarn. And there are a lot of patterns with like steel yarn, like steel spun yarn, and metallic yarns and things like that. So that does exist, but I'm not aware, at least, of anybody in the knitting community who is really like adding LEDs to scarves and shawls and things like that. And I think one of the big reasons is because it's actually quite an interesting and difficult little problem. A lot of what I see with LEDs and conductive thread are things like embroidery and cross stitch and things that lay flat and are rigid. And even cosplay stuff tends to be, it tends to be like sewn along the seams. It's not flopping all over itself, right? When you think about having a knit scarf and it being all bunched around your neck, and then you think about trying to do something with conductive thread with it, the problem is that the thread isn't insulated. So, you would just, if you were trying to like run power and ground throughout your whole thing, you'd just be shorting your LEDs out all the time. And so, half of them may not work or whatever. And so like, then it's like, okay, well, so how do you make something that's insulated, but that also doesn't add a huge amount of stiffness to your scarf because you still want it to be like nice and drapey and flowy. And even if you're like, well, okay, I could use some really teeny tiny, like 42 gauge enamel wire for this, then you're like, okay, well, like, yeah, sure, I could do that in a project because I know how to work with enamel wire. I have a soldering iron to strip the enamel wire, right? I can solder it to LEDs in the chain. But if you're thinking about like, well, I want to encourage knitters who don't necessarily have soldering skills or like previous electronics experience, I want to encourage like your average knitter to play with LEDs. It just becomes more difficult because then you're like, okay, there's not a really good way of handling that particular type of wire without specific tools like that. So I think it's a really interesting problem. And yeah, if anybody knows of some super duper small, flexible, insulated wire, like I'm all ears because it would definitely be interesting.
You said about encouraging people to put together circuits without the barrier of soldering.
Yeah.
I know about Chibitronics and the sticker-based circuits. And I know the theory of conductive thread, but I've never used it for anything. I mean, I think if I was going to use it, it would be sewing on my sleeve to do something. You know, if I touch a spot, then something lights up.
Yeah. Yep. And there's a lot of stuff out there for that right now. I mean, cosplayers are doing amazing sewable circuits and, making pockets that are switches, zippers that are switches, stuff like that. That's like really, really cool. I actually don't have a big background in sewing. I do like a tiny bit of hand stitching, but I'm not a big sewer in terms of like sewing machines and making your own clothes and things like that. So that stuff is a little bit of a learning curve for me, just in the sewing aspect of it.
I don't know how to knit. I used to be able to sew with the sewing machine, but that was long ago.
It's just like riding a bike, they tell me.
Yeah. Let's see how well I do if I ever get the right sewing machine. Have you thought about adding that to some of your frivolous circuits?
Yeah, I definitely have. I would like to do a little bit more than that. We're actually doing, so Deborah Ansel and I are doing a live stream. The next Wednesday's live stream is going to be about making your own blobs, and where you basically either bend or hand knit, finger knit, addressable LED wire into a shape.
What?
So yeah, it's super, it's kind of like hilarious, fun, ridiculous, and very satisfying, and doesn't take all that long. So yeah, super, super fun. But, you can just get these addressable LED strands off of Amazon for like, $9 to $15, depending upon how long they are. They have a USB connector with a microcontroller in it and a button on it that cycle through a whole bunch of different built-in patterns. And so really all you have to do is like make a super cool shape out of this strand. And you can totally do that without, any soldering, or you don't even have to have knitting experience, because Deborah's method, she does this like cool, like swirl and zip tie kind of pattern. I knit because that made sense to me, right? Being a knitter. I was like, oh, I could totally knit a tube out of this. And you don't even have to, have any programming experience or anything, because there are all of these built-in patterns.
These are the fairy light size. These are small.
Yeah, they're kind of fairy light size. They're a little bit bigger because they are like the addressable LEDs, and they have like a big blob of epoxy over each one. And there's usually like a strand of 3 wires basically going, between each LED. So it's a little bit more substantial than fairy lights, but yeah, very, very similar.
Do you remember when those lights were like $200?
I do.
And were as big or bigger than the kind of big Christmas lights.
I remember when LEDs were only red. So, you know, it's not really impressive when you say, do you remember when addressable LEDs were expensive?
I just had so many projects I wanted to do with addressable LEDs. And now that they're here, it's like, yeah, I didn't really have time.
You were ahead of your time.
I could just buy that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so finger knitting? That's not a thing. That's not a thing.
Totally a thing. It's totally a thing. And it's funny because I haven't really been interested at all in finger knitting. Basically because it's great for kids. It's great if you're just starting out and stuff like that. But like it makes big chunky garments, right? Which are not the kind of things that I prefer to make. So however, if you're trying to knit with LEDs, it turns out it's just really easy to use your fingers and to make loops and to push them through other loops. And that way you can also, you can bend the wire exactly the way that you want to, so that the LED is nice and centered in the middle. I haven't actually tried to knit it with needles. And I do have some big giant plastic ones that would probably work, but it would also twist the wire a lot. And I think it wouldn't actually help. I think it would actually make it a little bit harder.
And this show that's coming out before this one does, the goal is to make a blob, which I think is a very nice low bar that maybe I could do.
Well, did you look at them? Because they're not just blobs.
No, they're super
well structured blobs.
They're really well structured for blobs.
But you know what? Your blob can be whatever you want your blob to be. Blobs are not stressful. Blobs are willing to be whatever shape you feel like making in the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Build a Blob was October 13th at 5 p.m., but you can still watch the video, even though that's in the future now, but in the past for anybody listening to this.
Okay.
Time is hard. Never work on time. And you're doing that with Deborah, who is also known as GeekMomProjects.
Yes.
She's going to be on the show in a little while. I didn't realize you knew each other.
Awesome. I've met Deborah via meetups and Twitter, like in the past year. And I was down in LA about a month ago now, and that's where she lives, in the LA environs. And so I actually got to meet up with her in person. And that's when I saw the amazing blob that she had just like sitting on her desk. And I was like, what? That thing is so cool. And she's like, want to make one? And I was like, yeah. And so that's how blob madness kind of ensued.
The extra large googly eyes are just the best part.
Yeah, you got to have the big googly eyes. I tried. I only had small googly eyes when I got home, and they just didn't look right on the blob. You really have to have the big ones.
What should I ask Deborah when she's on the show?
Oh my gosh. Everything. She comes up with like such creative and interesting things, both like wearables and, just like the blob. I would never have thought about just making a blob out of those lights and making like this sort of like cool little pet. I would love to know how she comes up with her ideas. Like, what does that crazy thought process look like?
It's funny, when I invited her, one of the things she said was she's not classically trained in electrical. And you are. And so it's pretty funny to have you be together and be able to do both. I like the collaboration. I'm looking forward to more collaboration.
Absolutely. But she is a programmer though, too. So like, I don't know, when I feel like programming and electronics are there's a lot of crossover there.
Especially in my job.
Right?
Which reminds me, getting back to, if you were teaching a course about embedded systems, which 3 topics should you definitely cover?
Okay, I have better answers now. I would still go with the commenting. I would absolutely cover ESD protection. And I think I would cover like testing and troubleshooting. I think that like those are probably some of the most important things that will prevent you from having problems in the long run.
You should probably show how to use a logic analyzer.
Oh no, I'm doing that.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
doing
all
that.
right.
And I'm doing testing pretty well, but there is a point where I just like lick my hands and then run them over the boards.
That seems like it would hurt on a lot of boards.
Well, no, I mean, actually, I just flipped chips out of their boards, and I wasn't planning on making it super ESD.
Well, you know how I feel about ESD.
It's fake.
Oh, it's fake until it's not. It's never a problem until it is, and then when it is, it's a freaking beast of a problem.
But chips have gotten so much better about that.
I think it's all a scam for big wristband.
Yes and yes and no.
I'm kidding, totally kidding.
No, I was talking about I was talking about chips getting better about that because it is a bigger deal in lower voltage systems. They tend to be more susceptible to it, and there aren't as many good protections for low voltage components as there are for higher voltage. Like it's hard to get. There aren't many like TVS diodes that are made for 3-volt systems.
Cool.
So not as many as are made for 5 volts, at least. And I think it actually does have to do with like the physics of it, which I don't know because it's been a long ass time since college.
Well, it's better to go ahead and lick your hand and then touch the board than to like rub your hands together and then, or shuffle your feet. Yeah, no, I have ESD protection.
No, it's the balloon. You're supposed to rub a balloon on a cat and then rub that on your board. Not the cat, the balloon.
It's true, because the cat can cause other damage.
Yeah, it can scratch your silk screen and your solder mask.
Well, Carrie, I know that this hasn't been quite long enough, but I want to catch up with just you and not all these other people.
Heck yeah.
Do you have any thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
I guess my final thoughts are, and this is kind of, I just, there have been so many people lately, so many stories about women being in these jobs that are just like unappreciative and discouraging environments. And, I just want to say, like, I hear you and I wish it weren't that way. There are a lot of other cool people out there. And yeah, sometimes taking a break from electronics is really good. I mean, I dyed yarn for a few years, and then finally I was like, okay, you know what? I do actually miss it and I want to get back into it. And I was sort of ready to do that more on my own terms. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you came back, although it's been a while that you've been back, so I don't feel like welcome back is the right term.
Yeah. Maybe like congratulations for still being back. I don't know.
There's some of that. I mean, it's sometimes hard to just stay. The grass is always greener on the other side of the mountain. That's because the mountains in the Alpenglow, it was a callback.
Gotcha.
Although if I have to explain it, it's a bad one. So I'm getting that. Our guest has been Carrie Sundra, founder of Alpenglow Industries.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you so much. It's been super fun.
Thank you to Christopher for producing and co-hosting. And thank you for listening. You can always contact us at show@embedded.fm or hit the contact link on embedded.fm. And now a quote to leave you with from Elizabeth Barrett. Alpenglow. Even the rainbow never dreamed of this. The touch of last light on snowy shoulders. The kiss of dawn on crystal lips. A rush of rarest red welling up to fill the mighty sky with splendor.